Hey, this is Kahja Elliott, Bronx born and raised, ATL made, Bay Area becoming, and this is the As Told By podcast. All right, we're back with a new episode this week of the As Told By podcast. I'm Kahja Elliott, host of the As Told By podcast, and what a fun episode today. I'm here in Oakland, in the Maxwell Park section of Oakland, to talk to the owner of one of my favorite businesses. So let me introduce her. Rachel Caygill, owner of Greenhouse Bakery, a cottage bakery located in the Maxwell Park section of East Oakland. Launched in the summer of 2021. Rachel.
2018.
2018.
All of 2018.
Thank you. I stand corrected. Fall of 2018. Rachel, along with her husband Scott, specializes in sweet and savory comfort pastries and occasion cakes using organic flour and eggs and highlighting seasonal local produce. Rachel is a CIA alum with 20 plus years culinary career spanning both the East and West Coasts, and we're lucky enough to have her here with us in the Bay.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Welcome to the pod, Rachel.
Thank you so much.
So listen, I'm a fan. I have been a customer of Greenhouse Bakery for a little bit now. I love the model, love the product.
Thank you.
So really excited. I'm sitting here in the actual bakery.
This 350 square foot tiny little basement.
You're getting a lot done.
Basement studio, though. It's a built out basement.
You're getting a lot done in 350 square feet.
Yeah.
Love
Mostly equipment in here, though. So it's a lot of that is taken up by equipment.
Well, look, if you hear that little bit of whistling in the back, there are fans, there are ovens, there are racks, there are mixers, there are all the things here. So let's jump right in.
Okay.
So I read that you are a San Diego native.
Uh-huh.
And by your account, you grew up in a house where there was a sense of a lot of exploration around baking.
Yes, definitely. With my dad was so I was mostly raised by my dad, who was an electrician when I was really young, but he definitely he loved the kitchen. He loved to cook. We grew up on a lot of meatloaf and that kind of stuff, but where he was really creative was in baking. And at one point he was always testing out new cookies, always doing I think he had this mind that he maybe wanted to start a cookie business or something. And then he also would enter contests, and he entered an avocado contest one year and made an avocado cheesecake. What? I know. And I was like, what is that? But it was actually, I remember it being really good, kind of like a key lime pie or something.
Okay, so look, you got it honest. Was your home one where, some homes it's like, okay, kids, go sit down, I'll call you when the food is ready. But was yours more like one where kids were encouraged to be in the kitchen, getting their hands dirty and exploring food?
My home was very not typical. I have 3 sisters, one of whom is a stepsister. So when I was really young, she didn't live with us. My parents divorced when I was really young. And my sisters and I were kind of on our own. Okay. It was the 80s, so it was a very different time.
Yes.
And there was always food, and there was always love, but there was not a lot of supervision. And, there were often times when my dad was a single dad. So there were nights where my dad we called it snack dinner. And it was like, you fend for yourself. Yeah. So it was not no, we weren't in the kitchen playing or anything.
In the kitchen trying to eat.
We were in the kitchen trying to eat.
Yeah.
My grandma, though, my dad's mom, was she was a homemaker from, the get-go. And, we would go over to her house. They didn't live very far away, my grandparents, and we would always bake with her. And she had all these old church cookbooks, and so we would pick things out of there, and it was very homey stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So a little bit of cooking for fun going on in your home, but then also it was necessity. Parents are doing other things. They're busy, and we got to eat.
Exactly.
I love that. So growing up in San Diego, you come out of this environment with this baking going on in the house. And then after high school, I understand you go off to attend the esteemed CIA, Culinary Institute of America, And then from there, you go to New York. So, what made you make that decision to go there? And then what was the decision? Because I heard you didn't stay long. So, what was the decision to
Right.
go and then to leave?
Well, so we moved to Indiana when I was 12. And so I went to high school in Indiana and I needed to get out of there. And so I was like, I knew I was not going to make it in college. So that's why I went to culinary school. I had undiagnosed ADHD when I was in high school, and which makes so much sense to me why things felt
Looking
the way
back
they
now,
did,
yeah.
but I knew I needed to do something with my hands, and I knew I always wanted to, I wanted to be like a useful person. That's kind of like how I have, and still, I mean, that's still in me.
Mhm.
And so I went to CIA in New York, which is on the Hudson River, up
Okay.
about a couple hours north of the city. And then I actually moved back to San Diego for maybe 2 or 3 years. And I worked in kitchens. I worked on lines. Because I went to culinary school for savory cooking.
Okay.
And so at that point, that's what I thought I wanted to do. And then when I decided I wanted to move back to New York, I think I was maybe 22 or 23. My cousin, who is in hotels, got a job offer. And so she was moving to New York and just asked me if I wanted to go. And
Mhm.
actually, she and I had been to the city on vacation maybe 6 months earlier or something. And I was like, why not?
Okay.
And so I went out there, and I think just like every other 20 something that moves to New York, I think I really thought, you know what, I'm going to go there and
I'm going to take this place by storm.
literally that was the thought in my head, but it ate me up.
Mm.
It ate me up immediately. I did not belong there. And I'm such an introvert, and I always have been.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I really knew that about myself then,
Mhm.
because I can be an extrovert too, when I need to be.
Mhm.
And so I was lucky to get a job at a really amazing restaurant, Gramercy Tavern, because I knew someone who knew someone.
Okay. That's how these jobs be happening.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. But I was working in the front of the house, and I feel like I got there, and as soon as I got there, I was saving to get out of there.
Wow.
So I was only there for maybe 8 months,
Okay.
but it made a big impact on
But
me.
you went.
I went.
You went. I'm a big proponent of move out of your hometown. The Bay
Totally.
is my third stop. I'm from New York originally, so I'm
Okay.
born and raised in the Bronx and went from New York to Atlanta, Atlanta to the Bay Area. This probably won't be my last stop, even though I'm not looking to leave anytime soon,
Right.
but you get so much added to you as you go to these different places.
Totally. I mean, I have always been somebody who enjoyed change, and so I mean, even when I lived in San Diego for a long time after New York. Well, not that long. I guess it was really only 6 years, but it felt like it was so long because I moved. So I moved from, or maybe it was 7 or 8 years. I don't know, but I moved. I moved a lot because I was always. I just like to.
That's like moving.
I just like change.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that because the opposite, can be something in and of itself altogether. One of the things I really find myself loving about your story is that you seem to have just kept finding ways to morph this into different iterations, right? Different iterations of home baking before eventually going back into the restaurant space. So, what do you feel like you learned during the time in between leaving the restaurant environment and then going back to it later on in your career?
I did not learn how to behave in a kitchen, that's for sure. I came up in really harsh kitchens that were you are either with us or against us kind of a vibe. The really like if you're not working 12-hour days, 6 days a week, you're weak.
Okay.
And so I don't know. I did learn what my style was though,
Okay.
because when I came back from New York, I met a woman named Carrie Whaley, who is here in the Bay Area now, who I love so much. And we both worked at a tiny little cafe that is no longer down in San Diego, but was such a cute little French cafe. And she had been hired to make croissants. And I was really interested in pastry at that point, but I didn't really know anything about it. But I saw her making these croissants by hand, and I was like, how does one do that? Very long story short, she showed me how to make croissants. And after a lot of like trial, I finally like got it. It's like something you have to like get in your body. And so we started a business, and I was kind of back and forth. And from her, though, I really learned how to like just embrace the things that I love. And she is the daughter of the people who founded Seed Savers, which is like an organic heirloom seed collectors, and they're still there today. But she grew up on this farm with all these amazing heirloom produce. And she, people like Martha Stewart would come to her house, things like this. But she was such a humble person that just loved what she loved. She would make banana bread, and she would get out like a bowl that wasn't big enough and a fork, and that's what she would mix it with. She was just like such this like effortless home baker, and it felt really like, oh, it's okay to be like that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I think, like what my style, I mean, maybe it doesn't look like it is now because it looks a lot more refined, but at its core, that is what my style is. That just like making something that you want to eat, that you want to eat again and again. And that's how Carrie was. So I met her while working front of the house at a restaurant. And then I went on to be a pastry chef at a restaurant where I was running the pastry program on a day-to-day basis. But I had another amazing person named James Fran, who was another one of my really big mentors. He's an amazing pastry chef, and he would make the menu, and then I would execute it. And I was also a manager in the kitchen. And he had he also has a really wonderful style, but a lot more, just fancier. This was a fine dining restaurant.
Okay.
And then after that, I went on to do farmers markets on my own, and I was doing kind of my own thing, but like still kind of like waffling between this, like, do I need to be like fancy, or can I do this homey stuff? And I did that for a while, and then just went on. I mean, I did a lot of stuff. I was always waiting tape. I've always had a million jobs. I've always been very busy by design, though,
Yeah.
And I stopped doing farmers markets, and then I was doing was waiting tables, but I was also just kind of like making desserts for restaurants. And I would make ice cream sandwiches for this pizzeria that was down the street from me. And I would do really, I mean, like anything anybody asked of me, because if I could do it.
You've done a lot of jobs in
Yeah.
the culinary, in the restaurant space.
And then the chef that I had worked for at 2 previous restaurants, and that was about to open another restaurant. And it was it was not fine dining. It was much more a neighborhood place. And I really wanted to go be the pastry chef of that restaurant, because I knew that I could go and do my own thing and really do my style there.
Yeah.
I knew I could, because the restaurant matched it, and because I felt like I was ready. And so he wanted me to come on before it was open, and we talked about it for a long time. And I asked him for, I'm not even joking, I was about to be a manager and work so many hours. And I asked him for $40,000 a year, and he made me wait a month before he agreed to $40,000 a year.
Oh, okay.
Right. I mean, okay. So, and that's how much I made the entire time I was
Wow.
there. And I was not only was I the pastry chef, but I was a manager, or, obviously a kitchen manager, but I was also the sous chef there. So I was doing all kinds of things.
You got a deal.
Right. Right. It's so fun. But I didn't even know. I mean, this is, 15 years ago, but even 15 years ago, that's not a lot of money,
Yeah.
for working as much as, I mean, I was young too, and I didn't have any kids. And anyway,
you made it.
I made it.
Look, and thankfully you went back to the restaurant space, because this is where you met your partner in the business,
Yes.
Scott, your husband.
Yes.
When I was researching information about you, and I regard myself as, and I'm working on this, Rachel, I regard myself as a diehard individual, right?
Okay.
I work really well
Yes.
individualistically.
Me too.
But I'm trying to get out of that mentality. So what has been the best part of kind of living, learning, and growing this business together with your husband?
Oh, we have very different strengths. He's an amazing cook, but Scott has he has a growth mindset. and I do not.
Mm.
I am very, again, like you, I'm very individualistic. For the longest time. So we started in 2018 here.
Mm-hmm.
We opened this business because I wanted to put down some roots. We had bought this house. We could not afford it. I had 3 kids under 5. And I was like, I got to do something to make some money.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, well, I can bake. And I started putting things out on Nextdoor. It was like, I'm going to have a bake sale. And the neighborhood showed up immediately. The community was here
I bet they
immediately.
did.
And it was really wonderful. But again, I had 3 little kids. But as soon as there was more demand than I could produce, Scott was like, you got to hire someone. And I was like, no, I don't want to. We were up in our house. It's a mess. There's 3 kids. I didn't want somebody up in our space. I'm pretty unorganized. A lot of my recipes are like literally like they're just handwritten, like with a ton of stuff on the side. I just didn't want to have to train someone, I guess. And and I didn't want someone up in my space. But then we built this space for my mom to move into during the pandemic. She never moved in.
Okay.
Which is a whole nother story. But then we rented it out, and then Scott got a promotion at work. And at that point, I really wanted to open something. I wanted to get out of the house. I was done baking in the house. We were actively looking for places. We put offers in on multiple places. And I'm so glad we didn't open something. But we had a tenant down here, and then that tenant, he was a temporary tenant, and he told us he was moving. And right at that same moment, Scott had gotten this promotion that involved travel, and Scott suggested I move down here. And I tell you what, my ego was like, absolutely not. That's ridiculous.
You want me to be in a basement?
And I was like, I'm going to open something.
Mm-hmm.
I can do this. But it also like never really, even though I really wanted to, it never really felt right. And looking back now, I realized that was kind of the step that I felt like I should take, And so moving down here was such a wonderful thing for us because there's been so much growth, and Scott has been the one pushing that growth. He's really, he was like, you need to hire someone. So I did. I hired somebody, and immediately it took a load off of me and allowed us to produce more, and then also Scott is really, I'd say he's like an efficiency expert. Every time he comes down here and works with me, he's like, why do you have this over here? It should be over here. He's always doing things like that.
Those people, sometimes they irritate the hell out of you, but don't you need them?
Absolutely. Or my favorite thing, though, is that Scott will come up with an idea and he'll say, we need to do X, Y, and Z. And I'll be like, no, we're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. And then for months he'll say, we need to do that thing. And I'm like, no. And then I'll think about it. And then I'll come back to him like it was my idea.
Oh, Rachel, we got a lot of comments. Wow. This is I'm sitting in the bakery. This is a whole production hub, right? But this is also, it's a spacious home, but it's an average size home.
It's a 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom. Well, I mean, it's 2 bathrooms now because we added one.
You added something.
Yeah. Like,
how are you creating distinctions, like either literally or in your head, to have this full-scale bakery operation in your home without it completely taking over?
You mean like physically taking over or taking over my mental life?
Both. Like I know you have the space down here compartmentalized, but at the end of the day, your home is just right up the stairs. So how does it not just become one big thing?
Well, so that is why I really I needed to get out of my home upstairs, because there were speed racks in the living room. It was there was no space for anything. But some work stuff is upstairs, and things like oh, we ran out of milk upstairs, we come down here, but it is actually pretty separate.
Okay.
Which is I mentioned I have ADHD, and clutter really just sets me off, and I have 3 kids, so there's a lot of clutter. But if there's the work stuff up in my living space, which there's an ongoing pile of stuff that needs to move downstairs, but it's not too bad. Now mentally though, it does take over, and it is I mean, like, as much as I think that work-life balance is kind of a myth, and like for me at least it
I
is,
agree.
but it has, I tend to go all in on things, and I am constantly thinking ahead, and I have 40 million lists going at any one time,
Mm-hmm.
and prep lists and things I need to, grocery shopping or order or whatever. And I recently got really sick last month, actually. I got pneumonia, and then it got really bad,
Oh, wow.
and then it turned into vertigo.
Oh,
And I had vertigo for like 10 days. And during that time, it was like a wake up call for me on like allowing allowing my work to just completely take over. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't drive my kids to school. I couldn't even pack their lunches. I was really laid up, and it made me really appreciate like that I need to take a step back mentally from work and allow work to just be work. It doesn't have to be my whole life,
yeah.
It's such a big piece of me, and it feels so like I'm putting a piece of my heart out there every time
You
I'm selling
are.
selling baked
Yeah.
goods. But it doesn't have to be like that. It can also be work.
Yeah. I would imagine it's easy to make those distinctions when you aren't emotionally attached to what you do. But when
Exactly.
you're working in your passion and you're working on what you love, I don't know if you ever just wake up in the middle of the night, oh, I need to go downstairs. I can't sleep, so I'm going to
Uh,
go downstairs and roll dough. Or I got a few extra hours, something got canceled. Let me go downstairs and work on some cookies.
Yeah, yeah. That I don't ever get up in the middle. I mean, because I get up in the middle of the night already. I
Hmm.
mean, but I wake up super early. I usually am up by 4 or 4:45 at the very latest because I like to get some work done before my kids are up in the
Yeah.
morning. So I come down here, I do a couple hours of work, I wake them up, get them ready for the day. They go off to school, and then I'm hopefully done by the time they get home from school.
You hope. You hope. Um, to get into some more of the technical questions, when I've come to pick up and you have the assortment of things, I'm a big like food nerd.
Hmm.
One of my favorite shows is America's Test Kitchen because they
Okay,
really
okay.
speak to the science,
Yes.
right, of how
Hmm.
things are done. So I always wondered, like, how do you approach the science of making such a variety of items at once, given that doughs have such different requirements of the environmental conditions around you?
Okay, so it's such a funny thing you asked that because I am so not a technical baker.
Really?
I know it may seem that way. I am not at all. I am a grandma baker. I am a trial and error and same error and same error and same error over again baker until I'm like, oh, that's not working. And I think the way that we're able to make as much as we do now and do it, and the timing of it is just having done it so many times now. Like I we work with three main doughs. We do croissant dough, brioche dough, and pie dough. And then obviously we do like cakes and cookies and stuff like that too. But you can make so many different things out of those doughs. And people will come in and they'll say, "How long did it take you to make all this stuff?" And it's like, well, we've been making it like for weeks
Hmm.
because you can freeze things that are made with pie dough and then just bake them off that morning.
Hmm.
You can also freeze brioche dough. Like when you showed up, I was making cinnamon rolls and I just put them in the freezer, and then we'll pull those out and let them defrost in the fridge, and then I let things proof overnight. I do
Okay.
have that is the one like technical thing I think that I have figured out, because all of my yeasted recipes are like I have them figured out to where I pull things out the night before,
Hmm.
and then it's always 72 degrees in here. We have a heating cooling unit, and so I
Uh-huh.
leave, if it's in the winter, I'll leave it on at 72 degrees, and I have thermometers all over the place in here, and barometers, so that I know, by the time I wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning, that something will be ready to go in the oven. But usually I come down here at 1 in the morning, all my cookies are trayed up. Those are the first thing that gets baked off. If we're doing a quiche, the quiche goes in next because that takes a while. And then by that time, usually the cinnamon rolls are ready to go in. And then a lot of the croissants, the ones that get filled, will be proofed enough that we can then fill them with their things.
Okay.
And so it's really, I guess I don't approach things in a technical way. I just kind of like approach them in like a feel. Like I feel like everything I do is done by feel. Like I am not somebody who's taking temperatures of doughs and writing. I don't write things down enough. I'm always like, oh, I'm going to remember that. And then the next season comes around and I'm like, what scoop did we use for that?
You're
You
making
know?
it work. Making it work. So looking at the logistical process of how Greenhouse Bakery works. So when you bake, what actually gets, baked for offering? Talk about the ordering process, the process on pickup day. How in the here's a question I've wondered every time I come here. How in the world did you get the block, the neighborhood at large, all the people who live on this street to go along with this?
So it grew gradually, as you know, and when we very first started in 2018, I brought pastries, and this whole operation is very different than I ever intended for it to be. It has grown into its own thing, you know.
Okay.
But so when I first opened up, I just brought pastries to the whole block, really, and like a menu, like this is what I'm gonna be doing this, and you can order, and then, I mean, from there, we could not have arrived on and bought a house on a better block. Everybody is amazing here. I mean, they're not only are they like cool, but and supportive and like don't get pissed. But like one of our neighbors, a couple blocks up or a couple houses up, she's a jam maker and like she's sold her jams in our front yard
Okay.
before. And then next to her is heliotrope skincare. They Jonathan, the owner, he just closed his store in the city, but he also has something in Jingletown, and he's sold his products out front too. And so like it's, I don't know, we've just been very lucky with our neighbors, and we try to keep them happy with pastries. All of our extra pastries go to our neighbors.
Bribery work.
Yeah. I mean, and also though, like we have had like problems with parking, as you know, and like that's always been like an open line of communication. Like, okay, let me know. Like if one of my neighbors came to me and was like, look, what you're doing isn't working for me, I would say, let me figure out how to make this okay with you then.
Yeah.
Like if they don't like a line, like let me figure out how to not have a line. Like I'm never gonna, this is my home and this is their home as well. Like I'm never gonna do anything to piss people off or say like, oh, well, that's my business. You deal with it.
Right. It's such a unique model. So just, for people who are not here in the Bay, or if you're here, but you just haven't been to Greenhouse Bakery, let me just walk you through, right? Like, so first of all, you post on Instagram a few days or, beforehand. So you post what the offerings will be. So there's boxes that are mocked up where these are the things that are in the box. And then you have a la carte things you can get. So now here to me is one of my favorite parts. I call it the Hunger Games. When you get the text that says the order form is about to go live, you have to be ready. You have to know what you want in your box, and you have to have at least good 15 minutes to refresh, because as you're trying to put things in your cart, things are selling out, or it's not sold out, but it's already in cart. So you're having to refresh. It's a game. I enjoy it actually, but it's a game. You get your stuff in your cart. Okay, now it's pickup day. It's usually on a Saturday.
And there are 2 Thursdays and a Saturday is what we have now.
Okay, got it. So we're expanding. I haven't been to one of the Thursday ones, so now let me
The Thursday
commit that
ones
to
are more
memory.
chill than the Saturday ones.
I bet. Okay, so you pull up on the block. There's a line. I think each time I've come here, there's maybe like 35 people in line by the time I get here. By the time I leave, that could be an easy 60, 70. But you get in line. If you put your pickup order in, you can like bypass the line and just come to the front and do your pickup. But if you're shopping, perusing, you come get in the line, because they always have things for you to order if you didn't get through or you didn't do the online order beforehand. So you get in line and it's like tailgating. People are talking, you get your chairs. I've brought a book out and you sit out. And here, what I really loved about it was the efficiency, because there's a sign.
That's Scott for you.
Come on, Scott. There's a sign that tells you what is for sale, but there's also the link to the
The
dock
QR code.
where you can bring up the list in real time to see what has sold out so that you don't get to the front of the line with your heart set on X and then X is not there. So you had time to make adjustments while you were waiting
Right.
in line. And I'm like, damn, this is efficient. You get up here, you come in, there's a visual sample of everything laid out like they used to do back in the day at I don't know if they still do this at a restaurant, Papados, where they have like a fake mock-up of all the desserts. So you really shop with your eyes. So you come in and you point, I'll take blah, 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 blah. They box it up, give it to you. There's somebody outside to take your money or your Venmo, and off you go. And I'm like, damn, they got this down to a well-run machine.
We do now, and actually I just realized the QR code thing was from a woman named Janice who worked here, who we loved her so much. She moved to Korea, but she swooped in, and I can't remember she's a project manager for a living, and she kind of
I'm not
emailed
surprised,
me
Janice.
she emailed me a few years ago, and she said, I like what you're doing. I'd love to be a part of it, but I'm not interested in cooking. Do you have anything I can do?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, thought about Scott's like, you got to find something for her to do. And I was like, you can, I need my recipes typed up. So she really hooked up my recipes. But then from there, she just started coming up with stuff to do. And she was like, what about a QR code? And she's like, I can work on Saturdays. I can take the money. And so like kind of the way it runs was on Saturdays was partially her. Yeah. It's a little different now, but yeah.
I love it. I'm a corporate gal coming from the HR world. I love an efficiency process.
Right. I mean, I love to go to a place where it's efficient, and then I'm like, that felt good, but like from back here, sometimes it doesn't feel
Right.
very efficient.
She's like, I'm just back here baking. You talked on your social media a bit about thriving on the stress of doing this, right? And given all the heart that you put into it, what's your relationship when you get feedback about Greenhouse Bakery, given that this business is so deeply connected to you on all these personal levels?
Well, when it's good feedback, it feels amazing. It's a little, pat on the back. If it's bad feedback, it stays with me for a very long time. Like, and I can't help but, of course, self-destruct a little bit and pick it apart, whatever they say, and try not to, I guess try not to like implode, but Scott's pretty good at like, taking feedback and making a change if it needs to be made. And if it doesn't need to be made, he's really good at just dismissing it. And so he is always wanting me to dismiss it too. And, I'll come back to bad feedback though. I really will. It'll be like something that happened 2 years ago, and I'll be like, remember that time
they said
there wasn't enough raspberries, but there was a pile of raspberries?
feedback, it's I'm working on my relationship to feedback as well. I have such a filter in my mind where people will give me information, and like you said, I'm very quickly like, okay, we're doing this, I'm not doing that. This makes sense, that's over there. Thank you for your opinion, but actually I'm not going to do that. So I'm really working on trying to really absorb the feedback before I start the filtering process.
So I totally get that. And, I think it has so much to do with the delivery of the feedback, though, because I do have to say I have two people in my life other than Scott that give amazing feedback. And sometimes it's constructive criticism. So one of them is my friend Eric, who has a Stronda bakery. He has a way of delivering feedback that, like, even if something wasn't right, it doesn't sound like an attack, and it's just like hey, you did this, and I know that it could have been, maybe it needed a little more of this or something. And then the other one is Josa, who works here. You'll probably see her come in on your way out here, but she's kind of our right hand girl, and she's amazing. She's been in the food forever. She's really a people person, and she's really good at just saying like, hey, I ate this, and maybe it needed a little more of that. I think there's a way of doing that rather than being like, this wasn't good, it just didn't taste, do you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. I'm a big fan of finessing the feedback. I'm part of a collective of entrepreneurs, and this is something we talked about just a week ago. Is like I want to finesse feedback. Like I want to find the right time and the right approach to give it to you. And you're like, listen, entrepreneurship doesn't have time for that. You need to just give it. But there's a middle ground, right? There's a
Yeah.
middle ground if we really want people to take and absorb and use the feedback. Giving it to them in a way that's palatable.
Totally. And it's when you're giving somebody feedback, it's like, hey, I respect you and I want you to do your best, where some feedback, like a negative Yelp review, for instance, would be more like maybe somebody, depending on what their Yelp review is. If it's just an opinion on like, I didn't like how this was made, but they're saying it in like I know better than them sort of way.
Yeah.
That's kind of one thing. A bad experience, where maybe something was burnt or, they had to wait a long time. That's different, and, I hate Yelp though. I really do feel like things could be dealt with in a better way.
I'm not a big Yelper. One, because I want to have my own experience. I
Yeah.
don't want you to color, jaundice my experience.
Right.
But two, it just seems like a place for people to go be punchy.
Kind of holier than thou. Like
Yeah.
almost like I am such an experienced eater that I know what should be done
Or
here.
baker.
Yeah, I mean, like, or that's what people come off as it to me. Like I know what I'm talking about, a lot of the time,
And even if you do.
Yeah, like exactly. Like who cares? We can all have our own experience.
This is true. People may not know that you are also a writer.
Kind of. I'd like to be. I like to write.
You do. Was that something that you've always loved, or is it like a developed love as a separate creative outlet from baking?
It is something that I would really like to develop. And I don't know that it's totally separate from, it kind of came on because, well, a few things. I mean, one thing is it kind of helps you work out a thought. It kind of helps you complete a thought sometimes. And for a few years now, I've really been thinking about writing a cookbook, but that feels very hard for me because
I heard it's a process.
Well, it is. I mean, there's so many. It's like I've listened to so many podcasts on this now and like read so much up on it that it's kind of like I don't know if I ever will write a cookbook, but I will write a cookbook proposal. Like that is my, that is my goal. I don't know that I'm ever going to write a cookbook, but I do want to write a proposal because
That's the start.
I have, but every time I start trying to write that proposal, it goes in so many different directions. So the thing is just finding the time to do that, and I really love to write about. I took a writing workshop earlier this year, and it was taught by a woman who she's written a few memoirs and she started off kind of as a food writer because she had a blog, a really popular blog called Orangette. But she has a way of pulling something out of you that you didn't even know what was in you, know. And she teaches personal narrative, and that's the kind of stuff I like to write is about my own life because that's what I know. And I will never be a non or a fiction writer. I don't think I'm ever going to write a memoir, but it is the stuff that I like to write because like I said, it kind of helps you complete a thought.
Yeah. I would love to read an excerpt of one of the things you wrote that I loved so much.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I would love to hear it.
Is that okay?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
You wrote on the changing seasons of fruit and motherhood. Don't wish these days away, the wiser mothers say. They see my tired eyes drowning in love in yesterday's shirt, crusty and stained with milk. You'll miss this someday, they say. I see a woman crossing the street alone in the middle of the day, and I wonder what that feels like, to be alone. I used to be my own person too. Thigh rolls turn into lanky legs, and I get enough sleep to wake up before them now. I drop them off at school, and on my way home, alone in the quiet, I see a mother walking slowly with her toddler, hovering so he doesn't fall off the rocks he's so carefully teetering on. I'm hit so suddenly with the tightness in my chest and a longing for those simple days. Something catches in my throat, the strongest urge to tell this tired mother, don't wish these long, slow days away. I love
That one always makes me emotional.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's I was telling you before we got started. My daughter she'll be 29 this year, and now I have an almost 2-year-old granddaughter. And I've just been blown away in the last 2 years. You realize how fast
Yes.
this has moved, because I can remember my daughter being the age that my granddaughter is now. So I read that and I was just like, wow. That's absolutely, and Rachel, there's so much I realized when my daughter became a mom. I don't remember. I was young and you're moving and you're trying to get things done and your own emotional growth and development. And you don't realize until years later, you've just been moving through this thing and you maybe have lost some of that time. So I loved what you shared
Well,
here.
thank you so much. Yes, I think that being a mom has been the biggest learning experience of my life.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. The kids are, I always, in my early days of becoming a mom, I used to always say that motherhood will show you who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
And introduce you to new versions
100%.
of yourself.
Yes, that's the truth. I mean, I feel like, I reserve the right to evolve. you
I
know
know that's right. Yes.
like I think when I first had kids, first of all, I'm a very different mother than I expected to be. I thought I was going to be a crafty mom, like somebody who like wanted to like do all kinds of stuff.
Scrapbooking and all
I
yeah.
am not her. I was never her. Like I don't know who that woman was. But I used to be a lot more like frustrated easily with my kids, and I really really I mean, and I still am, don't get me wrong, but I really try to like slow it down now, because now my kids they're 6, almost 9 and 11, and they're like their own people, you
Yeah.
know and it's cool to see like who they are and who they're becoming.
Yeah. Do they want to bake? Do they have an interest in this?
I mean, my kids, if I invite them to do something, they will jump at it, but I do not do that, because I am never a worse mother than when my children are in the kitchen with me. Like,
Don't be messing up my cookies.
I'm just, they're making a mess. I do Christmas cookies with them every year on Christmas Eve, and it is like, I mean, every year, it's like it takes exactly a year to forget how frustrating it is, because I get excited about it every year, and I have it kind of down to a like science on like how can we make the least mess,
Yeah.
but it is immediately it's just chaos, and like they're like animals, and it's not fun.
The chaos we love.
Yeah.
The chaos we love. Um, are you living out the dream of what you imagine Greenhouse Bakery to be?
I think that yes and no. I mean, like, okay, so when I first started in 2018, right when I was like getting everything ready to go, all the paperwork and everything, I read about a man in Arizona that was just opening up his bakery called Barrio Bread.
Mhm.
He's like award-winning, lots of people love his stuff. I've never met him, never had his stuff. I'm sure it's wonderful though. And I read about he was opening up this place, and he had been a cottage baker working out of his built out garage for 7 years. And I remember seeing that and being like, 7 years? That is a long time to be working out of your house.
Mhm.
Because my original plan was that I would start out doing this, and then once all my kids were in school, I would open something. And now never say never. We may still open something one day, Scott and I, like a real brick and mortar that's
Yeah.
open, more and doesn't operate like a pop up. But at this very moment, I have no desire to do that. I have
Yeah.
no, for me, the dream really is to be present in my kid's life physically and mentally, and to not, I tell myself this is the dream anyway, to not be so consumed by work all the time, to feel like I have an identity outside of being a baker.
Mhm.
You know, like that is my current dream.
Well, while you work on that dream, we're enjoying having you here
Well, thank you
and
so much.
being a baker. If you're not, if you have not been, if you're in Oakland or in the Bay and you have not been to Greenhouse Bakery, put it on your radar. The passion fruit curd donut. There was like a savory Danish that had like salsa matcha
Oh,
and goat cheese and asparagus.
oh yeah. We do the koali salsa matcha a
That's it.
lot.
Oh,
We love their stuff, and we do and we had I don't know if you ever had the potato one, the potato bun with
I've
with
had
the
the potato
koali.
bun.
Yeah, that was
I've
so
had
good
the
too.
cinnamon roll with the hint of the citrus in it, and it just really high quality, good stuff. It's not pretentious. Pro tip: I learned this the hard way. If you come here, we're approaching summer months. If you come here and you know you got other things to do during the day, just bring an ice pack because there's meringues and whipped toppings and things. And if you're
Yeah,
not going straight home, you want to preserve your goods. But definitely, this is one of my favorite businesses in Oakland. And to me,
thank you so
you're
much.
welcome. This is one of the things to me that is just like so dope about this community is you just find these little pockets of things and places and artisans and makers. And so I'm so glad that we have you here to ourselves in Oakland. Tell folks where they can find out more about you and Greenhouse Bakery.
We are on Instagram at green_house bakery. And then our website is greenhousebakeryoakland.com. We're actually next Thursday, or on the 23rd of this month. I don't know when this will be aired, but
That'll be gone by then, but that's
okay.
okay. Let us
Okay,
know.
we're about to take a summer break. And on our summer break, we just do cakes. And then every now and then we will do we'll do like slice sales, like cake slice sales or cookie boxes and things like that. A lot less big stuff during the summer because my kids are home.
Mm-hmm.
And we will start back up again in like late August, usually when they go back to school. And we do we'll have maybe a little different schedule in the coming this coming fall, but we have been doing the first Thursday is a pre-order. The second Saturday is pre-order and first come first serve, and then the last Thursday is also a pre-order. On those Thursdays, we also do have some first come first serve stuff, but it's just a lot less than we would have on a Saturday.
Got it. Okay. Well, listen, I will make sure I post all that information with the show notes. And anybody in the Bay, if y'all want to pull up with me, to Greenhouse Bakery, let me know. Because I do try to come by, not super often, because try to keep some control. But when I come by, I like to come and have a good time. So thank you so much for talking with me
Thank you so
today.
much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you want to keep up with me in between episodes, you can find me on Instagram at Hey K in the Bay. And that's been this week's episode of the As Told by podcast. Peace.